Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your client's peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome back to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is attorney and managing partner of the Ticktin Law Group, Michael Vater. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get a chance to speak with both y'all.
Absolutely. So before we dive right in and bombard you with all of our questions, I was hoping that you would give our listeners just a little bit of background about how you got where you are today. What made you want to be an attorney and go to school? What brought you into, you're a pro at litigation, an expert. What made you want to get into that field in particular? Give us a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. So I actually grew up just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. While I was in high school there, I was very active on our speech and debate team, competed nationally in the National Forensics League with extemporaneous speaking. I also was very active in the Future Business Leaders of America, performed in some national competitions there. After high school, I went to the University of Notre Dame, did my undergraduate studies out in South Bend, Indiana, and then ended up coming down south to the University of Florida. Graduated from the University of Florida Law School, and then went back to school a few years ago during the pandemic and earned an MBA from the University of Florida as well. I think one of the reasons that I got into law was I was always a big fan of history. And I really enjoyed learning about different aspects and historical time periods, and especially seeing how politics comes into play. I was a government and international studies major at Notre Dame. And then being able to, in law school, see not just these individual stories that come up in cases, but seeing the interplay. For me, each individual case was like watching a TV show or a movie, and you had the different actors in the case study, and they had a problem. And at the end of the day, the judge had to make a determination as to how to rule on their particular problem. For me now, in a very extensive business litigation practice, overseeing about 15 attorneys here in Florida at the Ticktin Law Group. I've been part of the firm since 2010. It's been great to be able to see some of those cases and now not only see it on TV, but actually be a player in that TV series.
That is a very interesting and very exciting background. So you do civil litigation. Talk to us about some of the different types of litigation that you guys do.
Sure. So in civil litigation, that basically covers all areas of law outside of criminal law. So one of the most popular areas is personal injury. If someone is involved in an automobile accident or a slip and fall or a trip and fall, we help those folks out, especially those that have suffered medical ailments that require assistance. We also are involved in probate litigation. We've seen a really big increase in the last few years of probate litigation, where people are having disputes related to what happens to someone's asset. Someone else passes on. There's sometimes disputes in terms of the validity of a will or a trust document. There also could be disputes as to what to do with the assets, how those are to be dispersed. We help out people with those. We also help people in real estate disputes. It seems right now that even though interest rates have gone up, there's been record number of home sales. We're seeing how the housing market has bounced back in a great amount, and we're helping a lot of folks out in terms of their litigation needs when they have an issue in real estate. Also, we help people out with family disputes or business litigation disputes. We have a tagline here at the firm that we are the lawyers you want between you and your problems. Really, any type of civil problem, we're just a phone call away and we're happy to help.
That's wonderful and really covers so many things. Stan and I obviously are the estate planning world. So we always joke that we try to make sure our clients don't go to probate, and that's our case for getting people to come in and get their estate plan done so that they don't have to end up with probate litigation. Really very broad areas that you cover. What are some of the mistakes that you see people making when it comes to litigation? What are some of the mistakes that you've seen and the impact of those?
Sure. I'll pull out three common mistakes. Number one is people are not proactive. They're not coming and seeing you and Stan in terms of making sure that they have their estate documents completed ahead of time. A lot of probate or probate litigation could be ignored if people were proactive and got their wills executed. They got their trust documents completed. They made sure that the documents didn't have ambiguities in them. Being proactive, I see, is one of the big mistakes that people make. I think a little bit of planning can go a long way to saving you lots of money in the long run and not having to involve lawyers and litigation later on. The second big issue that I see is people think they can do it by themselves and they're afraid to engage an attorney. What's interesting is at our firm, we practice not just in the state of Florida, we practice all across the country. And the laws in the state of Florida, for example, may be entirely different than the laws in the state of New Jersey. Even if you think you know how things are to be done, or you saw, well, this happened to my neighbor, or this happened to my relative, well, you have to be able to recognize that the laws are fluid. They are constantly changing. Every year, the legislatures make changes on the laws. They go in and they amend and update the laws. And people just don't realize that it's really beneficial to have someone that's looking at this, dealing with these issues on a daily basis, where these are directly in their wheelhouse. And that's something that we see here at our firm on a daily basis. And we help people that may have tried to have done it, do it themselves. So that's the second big issue that we see in terms of a mistake people make. The third one that we see is a lack of attention to detail. For example, when one gets served with a lawsuit, they have 20 days to respond. They may get the lawsuit and think, oh, I can deal with this next month, or let me just wait 4 to 6 weeks before, let me go on my vacation and take care of some other things before I go do it. And unfortunately, that 20-day deadline passes. The court may enter a default against you as a defendant. And what will then happen is it becomes a lot harder to address the lawsuit because now you've created these hurdles that you got to undo. And it's a higher burden to undo something than to do it right the first time. So by being proactive and taking these steps in terms of not doing it on your own and being diligent, that's where I see the biggest mistakes occurring and ways in which folks can improve their situation by being aware of these mistakes.
From our perspective, I would agree with those three things as well. Stan, I know you're full of questions. What questions do you have for Michael?
Yes, I want to focus in on what you were saying about this increase in probate litigation that you're seeing. I'm curious if you have a theory as to why you're seeing that uptick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of reasons. One is I think it's a reflection of society and the fact that there is significantly more generational wealth being accumulated today than ever before. And one of the things that we're seeing is that there is more there's more wealth being accumulated by families, both in terms of land and trusts and other type of investment vehicles. And what's happening is that the generation that's retiring and passing on is not spending those as much or spending those as much as past generations. So you have more wealth that's being accumulated during the working time of that generation and more money being available when one does pass on, where those assets are now, available to be dispersed. So when someone passes away and there's not much in terms of assets, it's not going to require the court to get that heavily involved. But when you're seeing more and more people that are millionaires, more and more people that have $10 million in assets, more and more people with even $50 million in assets, where it's not so much a rarity. Unfortunately, the more money that's available, the more likely it is that there's going to be a fight over that monies. So that's issue number one. Number two, in terms of why we're seeing more litigation, is because I think there was a period where people simply didn't properly prepare and didn't properly see what would be the next steps out there. And what we're seeing is a lot of people may have set up certain types of trusts or other types of vehicles to save money. And what they didn't realize was that the effect on these particular trusts and these effect on these particular investment vehicles in terms of how they were to be dispersed upon the death of the person that set it up. And maybe in a situation you had some money go to one particular trustee, and then you may have had another trustee step in upon the death of the other trustee. And what's happening is that you need the courts to be able to come in and make an adjudication, because here you have multiple parties making a claim and saying, well, this money or these assets are rightfully mine, while the other documents may contradict or create an ambiguity. So that's where we're seeing as well an increase in the amount of litigation and cases in that particular realm.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
really, really interesting. One of the things that we know is that people, even if they've done planning at some point, they don't maintain that. They don't have it reviewed systematically, and it gets really out of date. So that whenever they die, the planning documents don't really match up with the assets. So you have this mishmash that I can see does create an environment. One of the things I would tell you that I've observed over my few decades of experience in the estate planning space is one of the real drivers of controversy is tangible property, heirloom items, things that have emotional value. Maybe they don't even have any financial significance, but they have a lot of emotional significance. And that has been one of the significant drivers of controversy that I've observed. Have you run into that in your practice?
Absolutely. Every time that we open up a probate in the courts, one of the things that's absolutely critical is to inventory the assets. And it's really easy to identify real estate or vehicles. But when it comes down to it, there are these types of tangible personal property, these heirlooms, maybe someone's famous baseball card collection or someone's baby doll collection that has sentimental value. It has certain value among the heirs, and you have these competing claims to these items. And you're absolutely right in terms of one of the issues that we see is people don't regularly update their wills. They don't update their end of life documents. So it doesn't account for these changes in asset acquisition that become part of the estate. And it also doesn't account for changes in the law. For example, I know in the state of Florida, there have been certain changes that have occurred in the laws in terms of whether or not your property is homesteaded and what happens upon someone's death to homesteaded property. You can't just give the property to your brother or your sister if you're married. That property is automatically going to revert, if it's homesteaded, to your spouse. So you have certain protections that are in play, and oftentimes a lot of people just aren't aware that the law changes and gets adjusted quite frequently. And you need to be able to meet with folks that have this expertise and are dealing with this on a regular basis to address those changes and modifications.
Let me shift gears and go for a minute in a different direction. Let me say, I think there may have been a time, I don't think I'm old enough perhaps to remember that time, but there may well have been a time in the country when the idea of litigating, suing somebody was a bit of a taboo. It's like something you didn't do. And I think even today, when I look around the country, I find that there are parts of the country that are where litigation is more common than is the case in other places. And I'm wondering if you're seeing change in attitude about just like the social dimension of litigating, and then how that impacts how we all should be thinking about it in terms of protecting ourselves, maybe with asset protection plans or buying insurance and making that just part, like we all buy insurance on our home. So if there's a fire and it burns down, we have insurance that pays for that. But I'm not sure that it's become commonplace yet for people to buy insurance that would pay for the damages and the litigation cost if you get sued. So I'm wondering if, like, you're in this space every day, and I'm wondering, are you seeing, and you've been at this for a while, you're not brand new at this, right? So have you noticed any shift, any trend in thinking about litigation and its implications?
I have actually. I think one of the things right now, and there's been a lot of push from here in my home state in Florida by the Florida Supreme Court, is dealing with what's called docket management. In the state of Florida, each judicial circuit has a certain number of judges. There's 20 judicial circuits in the state of Florida, and that's where the 67 counties are allotted to. So some of the bigger counties like Miami-Dade, they make up their own circuit, and there are other smaller counties that in which there's a couple counties that make up that circuit. But right now, each judge that's a circuit judge, which handles the highest level of litigation. So we're not talking about small claims or more minor disputes. Each judge has about 1,300 cases in their division, which is a massive amount of cases for one particular judge. And what the Supreme Court noticed was a few years ago, there's such an influx of cases that there needs to be better management of these cases so litigation doesn't take years and years and years to be decided. You don't want to have a dispute that starts in 2018 be going on in 2024. So the Supreme Court in Florida came down with a particular guidance and mandate that identified that most cases are to be decided within 18 months. And by implementing strict regulations in terms of the timing of cases and certain benchmarks in terms of, time frames to complete certain aspects of a litigation, it's been set forth with that goal of being able to make litigation less lengthy process and to allow people to get their disputes decided more quickly. But even with that, there still are these massive, massive amounts of cases that are all fighting for attention before the one judge. And a typical case that goes to trial may very easily take 3, 4, 5 days to go to trial. So there has to be some sort of incentive in the system to be able to resolve your case prior to trial. And that's why one of the other things that the Supreme Court did was they basically implemented a mandatory mediation prior to trial where parties can attempt to resolve their disputes outside of court. So we are seeing people more willing to take their disputes to court. But at the same time, what we're seeing is more and more alternative dispute resolutions, whether through mediation or where the parties hire an arbitrator to keep their battle outside of the court system and privately pay for a neutral third party to make a determination or a decision on their case and on their dispute as a way to resolve conflicts, because we're seeing more conflicts. But at the same time, we're seeing that parties are looking more so at other ways rather than just going before a judge or having a jury decide the issues in their case.
Right. So what's your take on mediation? Is it working generally? Is it making the system more efficient? Just what's your thought about it?
I'm a big proponent for mediation. I think it's not just going to mediation and having someone go from side to side, being a messenger and explaining, hey, this side's asking for this dollar amount and the other side's asking for Y dollar amount, and going back and forth between the sides and between the rooms. No, where I see the value of mediation is it really helps parties understand the strengths and weaknesses of their positions and their cases. And by having a mediator that's able to provide that type of neutral interpretation of one's case is very powerful, not just for the parties, but for the attorneys as well. I can think of cases, and especially dealing with an estate or a probate litigation, where parties may not have considered a certain position that would be taken, or may not have realized that, well, and the mediator can provide that ear to the party and say, the way you're explaining it doesn't necessarily make me want to find your particular position. Have you considered these other perspectives? And that's really where cases get to settle. When cases settle at mediation, no one's going home super happy. Everyone's having to compromise and give a little bit. But by having mediation, it ends up being more cost effective for litigants, which is a big part of our firm, is we look to be cost effective for our clients because they're not spending eons of more money going to trial and hiring expert witnesses and having them testify at trial. What they're able to do is resolve their case. And if you do the cost benefit analysis, they're often making out more at the mediation. And they're also being able to control the outcome themselves. They're not going to Vegas and hoping to roll the dice and come up with double sixes. They're actually able to control that outcome themselves.
What percentage of cases, just in your own experience, what percentage of the cases that go to mediation are resolved in the mediation?
I would say from my own experience, at least 80% resolve either at the mediation or sometimes a few days later. What happens is sometimes, parties start thinking a little bit more in depth and they start looking at the case a little bit differently, and they go back to their attorney and they say, well, I wasn't really a fan of this at the mediation. I went in with this as my bottom line. Why don't we make a call to the other side and see if we can get the case resolved for this other number or get it resolved in this parameter? One thing that I'm also seeing as well with these mediations is you can't be afraid to expand the pie. And what I mean by that is, especially in a probate litigation, people think it's just black and white in terms of, well, you have these assets and you want to divide these assets in this particular way. But what I'm seeing is by expanding the pie and looking at other things and saying, well, let's just not look at assets. Let's look at other types of either liabilities, or let's look at other types of how do we want to deal with like a memorial or a scholarship or some sort of other plan. Can we expand the pie beyond just the assets to reach some sort of global resolution to get the deal done?
Yeah. So you have a lot more creative opportunities there than in a court context. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's really a great opportunity for lawyers to put on their creative cap and try to come up with some sort of solution that's going to be acceptable to everyone. I can think of a probate case in which it was a dispute between siblings, and it was a dispute over the assets. But by being able to say, well, it seemed as though the decedent, seemed as though dad really had a great affinity for this particular college and university and wanted to make sure that a scholarship might be endowed. Maybe we can set it up where we endow this scholarship and do this and then get the deal done that way. And sure enough, we were able to do it. So,
yeah, cool. Katie?
Very cool. Yes. Well, before we run out of time, Michael, is there anything that you would like our guests to know, our listeners to know that we have not covered yet?
Well, I would say that the big thing is don't be afraid of speaking to an attorney. I know a lot of people think, oh, attorneys, they're big, scary people. We're just humans like everyone else. And don't be afraid to get a second opinion or consult about a situation. Attorneys are folks that are really interested in trying to come up with solutions. One of the things that we value at our firm, not just is cost effectiveness, but creativity. We love putting on our creative cap as attorneys. It's one of the most rewarding aspects is being able to come up with a solution for our clients. And communication is key for us as well. Having those 3 C's is a mantra of our firm at the Ticktin Law Group. And we're real excited every opportunity we get to help folks. And it's very rewarding for us each day because we know we're making a difference in our clients' lives.
Absolutely. All great nuggets of wisdom. And I love the 3 C's that your firm has. Those are great. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. And our guest today was attorney Michael Vater. For more information on Michael and his firm, you can visit legalbrains.com. You can also find them on LinkedIn and Facebook, as well as Twitter and Instagram. We will link those in the show notes for you, so you can reach out to Michael with more questions or to get more information. Thank you again, Michael, so much for joining us. We really enjoyed the interview.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to helping any of your listeners.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.